Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is the story about Naruto. What if Naruto trained by Orochimaru? Part 2. Hope you'll enjoy this video. So before we start, please do support for more awesome content and also hit the subscribe button and share this video with your friends. And also support the creator of this fanfic. I have created many playlists, check it out in the channel. So let's start the video. Preparing. In a flat valley in the land of rice paddies, construction began on a secret project. Well, that depends on how one defines the word secret. In one way it was no secret at all, as anyone could see the construction taking place if they happened to be in the area. It was simply a new town being built to provide homes for a growing population and maybe provide more farmland too. Nothing out of the ordinary except some defensive walls and guarded passageways in and out of the area, but those were deemed needed to make it more secure until completion. But on the other hand, the reason for the construction, along with half of it, were completely unknown to anyone outside the country and many inside it too. Yes, providing homes was a big part of why this town was being built. But these were homes for shinobi, and no one not involved would suspect a thing. And that was exactly what the planners wanted. Orochimaru and the daimyo of land of rice paddies stood in front of a completed building looking over everything and their layout designs. The kids were back at the palace, being watched over by the snakes and some trustworthy caretakers. So the Sannin was free to be away for the moment. Things are looking good so far, aren't they, Orochimaru-sama? Daimyo asked. He nodded, smiling. Yes, indeed they are. I'm glad I keep that little pet project of mine around now. Back when Orochimaru had been an academy student, one of the assignments had been for all the kids to design a hidden village if they were the ones who made it. He did well, but overall none of the class had the right idea regarding what was essential for a hidden village. Some students had been frivolous and designed a metropolis designed more fit for civilians, while others missed out on several details mandatory for making the village be considered hidden or operable. After the assignment was over, he kept the design with him and spent years trying to improve upon it, mostly to satisfy his own curiosity and creative urges. Now he had a chance to actually do something with the idea. He was no architect, but a real one with shinobi experience would be proud of his concept. On the surface, the whole village would look like a completely normal civilian village. Walls would be around for defense against threats, both natural and man-made, but that wasn't suspicious since conflict was common, and several civilian cities had that feature now. There would be suburbs, apartment complexes, hospitals, hotels, schools, dojos, and gyms, parks, shopping centers, and entertainment centers. A casino and a public bathing area were added in too, as sort of an image to the other two Sannin, when Orochimaru initially worked on the design and saw no real reason to take them out. But under the surface, that was the beauty of all this. Underneath the city, and under the sewage system too, were secret chambers, bunkers, and hallways for shinobi to learn and train in. There was even a hidden academy and several training centers scattered everywhere, each designed to help in a particular area. Some in taijutsu, some in kenjutsu, some in ninjutsu, and some in genjutsu. This way, the shinobi of this village could train to their heart's content without fear of someone from the outside ever finding them or even knowing what was going on. The dojos could be used too, to get them used to training above ground, as long as they didn't use ninjutsu there. There was also an idea that the shinobi here only wear their hitai on the job, preferably out of town, rather than walk around in public so visitors wouldn't notice. With this in mind, it would be the one true hidden shinobi village by virtue of being hidden in plain sight. The daimyo had been satisfied with the conceptual design and provided what he considered the perfect location for the village. A flat stretch of land big enough to hold Konoha, if it had to, surrounded by mountains to the north and northeast. A gorge with a rapid river bordered the complete west, and a forest provided the remaining boundary. The mountains were not completely impassable, but a route being worked on would make it more convenient. A bridge was being constructed over the gorge, and two routes were being paved through the forest. Since the village was not trying to look like a hidden shinobi village, they needed these routes to make it more believable. They were being made in a compass fashion to make them easier to monitor, though should something go amiss. Construction might take some time, since we aren't letting too many in on this. The daimyo commented. So far the only help they had were from construction companies and shinobi with masonry skills who intended to settle down here when finished. If we could let another village in on this, then maybe things can go faster and we could have a ready ally. Reasonable, but who, and do I really need to say Konoha is not an option? Orochimaru responded. Of course not. I was thinking more along the lines of Taki, Hashi, or Kusa. The daimyo told him. Orochimaru arched an eyebrow. Them rather than Suna or Kiri or something? Well, the 5 great shinobi villages might have a lot of power backing them, but the lesser ones are more likely to bond with a fellow small village. Allying ourselves with them will make forming alliances with other villages easier too. And they're eager for business since they're often overlooked by clients in favor of the bigger ones. The Sannin nodded. Maybe, but having one of the major villages help might be a good thing. Especially if we need the manpower against Konoha. This time the daimyo arched an eyebrow. Do you intend to go to war with your old home? At the moment, no. However, if they happen to discover my group is here, Naruto-kun, and Anko-chan in particular, I'm sure they will cause trouble over it. And I'd rather be prepared for the worst. Suna would be the best option, as they're the closest. Iwa a close second, but I'd rather not risk their involvement either, if I can help it. Because of young Naruto, am I right? The daimyo asked, having been told about Naruto's heritage, to explain his situation better. Yes. Until I'm certain of their overall attitude towards Minato, I can't verify if they would be a threat or not. Most likely they are since Minato did not die that long ago, and one could not ask without raising suspicions they would look into. It might be years before anyone can. Orochimaru stated. Reasonable. The daimyo mused. So shall we stick with Sana and maybe 1 or 2 of the smaller villages? Let's see how much we can do on our own first. Sannin suggested. Besides, the underground network has to be completed first, and it's best if only our forces have a good feel for that area. What we really need are some established clans to settle down here. Maybe some civilians and their kids will be willing to learn to become shinobis, but some existing clans and Kekkei Genkai will give us some credibility when we make ourselves known. Why not go around other places to find people and families that have nowhere to go? Not fugitives that would sell you out, but desperate people with something to prove and willing to settle down somewhere. You know, like you were when you came to me. Orochimaru thought about it and shrugged. Why not? Orochimaru later made it back to the palace and gathered the kids together. Okay everyone, I'm going to be going on a trip for a bit to try and find more allies. You all will be staying here, with Kajioku and Sango watching over you with Daimyo-sama. Do, as they say. Everyone nodded, and he handed Anko something that looked like a paper bomb. Hopefully nothing bad will happen, but just in case something does happen, put some blood on this. That'll summon Manda to protect you guys, but it'll only work once. Do not use it for anything short of an emergency, got it? Anko nodded and pocketed the paper. Good. I'll be back as soon as I can. Stay safe. With that, the Snake Sannin left for parts unknown. So what do we do in the meantime? Kabuto asked after the adult who watched over them these past few weeks left. I guess we train. Any better ideas? Anko asked. Are you sure that's a good idea? Kurenai wondered, gingerly touching her curse mark. Ever since they got it, the kids were afraid to train, thinking it would control them if they trained. We've gotta learn to deal with it sooner or later. It's not like they're just gonna vanish with soap and water, Nai-chan. Anko replied. And if anything happens the rest can stop them, right? Naruto asked. Exactly, Atauto. Anko stated. Rather than keep up the discussion, Yamato just went right to doing push-ups, and Naruto, Hinata, and Isaribi joined in. Anko joined too, and after a moment so did Kabuto and Kurenai. Nothing bad has happened so far regarding their marks. And hopefully it will stay that way. Orochimaru had been traveling for 2 days now, not entirely sure just where he should be going. He couldn't go right to an established ninja village and ask if anyone there wanted to move. Clans weren't allowed to just up and do that for security reasons. And he couldn't go up to bandits and rogues making them offers since their very nature was based more on greed than loyalty. The best idea he had was going to civilian towns and asking if there were any families with shinobi potential that wanted to take the chance to use it. So now here he was, in a random town in the Land of Fire, taking a break and having a drink before going out again. Why are so many ideas easier said than done? He asked himself. I've been trying to figure that out myself. Another guy's voice said behind him. Orochimaru immediately recognized it and slowly turned around to see Jiraiya, along with Tsunade and a brunette he didn't recognize. Oh, hi Dobe. What brings you here? That's my line theme. Jiraiya told him. Orochimaru, we came to help out. That's what teammates do. Tsunade said gently. A little late, don't you think? He paused to take another gulp. Hey Tsunade, you actually took time off from your eternal binge to see me? I don't know if I should be flattered or worried. I heard from sensei what happened, and I got a hold of Tsunade here. We figured you might want some friendly company. Jiraiya explained. Orochimaru arched an eyebrow. What exactly did sensei say? In his words. Jiraiya cleared his throat. He said that you had a tragic loss and took it rather unwell and just vanished. He also told me to tell you that he hopes you'll come back when you can get yourself sorted out. Orochimaru glared. That's it? Word for word? Jiraiya nodded, and Orochimaru clenched his fists. That is one of the most apathetic things I've ever heard. We're sorry for you, Orochi. Tsunade butted in. We heard you lost your goddaughter and your work to some maniac. But you shouldn't take it out on sensei or the village. And I wouldn't if both had done more to help Anko-chan and Naruto instead of just. Wait. Did you just say Naruto? Jiraiya asked, caught off guard. The snake Sannin nodded. Yeah, Minato's son. The kid you two were supposed to watch over, but never did. Who did you think was watching over him all this time? The Toad and Slug Sannins exchanged a worried look before turning back to their teammate. Orochimaru, sensei told me he was killed just after the sealing. Couldn't handle the strain. Orochimaru wanted to puke, and it had nothing to do with the alcohol in his system. He told you Naruto died? Jiraiya nodded. Yeah, and then I told Tsunade. You mean he didn't? Orochimaru shook his head. Nope, he's still alive. Not that Konoha wants him to be. I faked his and my goddaughter's death so I could get them away from that child-beating shitston of a village. Tsunade started to cry. My godson is alive? Can I please see him? Orochimaru thought about it. I'll let you two see him, under a few conditions. First, you can't breathe a word of what I'm doing to Sarutobi, period. They nodded without a hint of protest, even Tsunade's assistant. Second, you need to help me find some trustable ninjas and clans to make allies with and are able to move about so I can protect the kids better. For the record, I learned that the current Mizukage is about to issue a Kekkei Genkai purge of Kiri. More like some kind of genocide, if you ask me. Jiraiya said quietly. Orochimaru smirked. Then if we get there first and offer them solace, we can get the people and numbers I need. Good, so let's head out tomorrow for Kiri. But I want to see Naruto. Tsunade protested. You waited 3 years, you can wait another week or so. I'm getting these shinobi first so Naruto won't be such a target anymore. You make it sound like horrible things have happened to him. Tsunade's apprentice commented. The look on the pale Sannin's face disturbed them all. I'll tell you more about that tomorrow. That way none of you will be unable to sleep tonight. So, are you gonna help me or not? The three Sannin along with Shizune had reached the land of water with no intention of staying there for long. They would get this little task over with, hopefully with good results, and go where they really wanted to be, land of rice paddies, and with Naruto. Jiraiya and Tsunade had heard what had happened in their absence and were ashamed of themselves, even though they were not entirely at fault for their absence. Still, that didn't make it any easier on their consciousnesses. When they woke up the morning after a chance reunion with Orochimaru, Jiraiya and Tsunade were all ears about what had happened to Naruto. Shizune was too, even though she never met the boy, just his mother through Tsunade. None of them liked what they heard. Flashback. Okay Orochimaru, tell us everything you wouldn't last night about Minato's son. Tsunade demanded first thing in the morning. The three Sannin were seated in a hotel room at the moment on one of the beds. Well, where to start? Naruto's alive, but has been hurt repeatedly his whole life. Since you two weren't there to watch over him, I took your place and just couldn't take it anymore and took him away from there. I faked his death to ensure no one could come after him. Why don't you give us the unsummarized version? Jiraiya asked. I will, but first, you two have some things I want you to tell me too. Orochimaru insisted. You first Jiraiya. Even if sensei told you Naruto has been dead all these years, why is it that in 3 years you didn't stop to visit me in the village? Even to chat? If you had then you'd see the truth then. What excuse do you have for not doing that? Jiraiya tried to steel himself, but slumped and sighed wearily. I wish I could give you one, but I can't. You know I've never been one for visiting just for pleasantries. I just figured you were content in what you were doing, and interrupting you just for a quick hi didn't seem worth it. One question though, if sensei told us Naruto was dead, what has he been telling you about us? Nothing about Tsunade except he couldn't get a response from her, but he said you were prioritizing your work and personally felt Naruto was better off with me anyway. Orochimaru explained. Why would he lie so much? Shizune asked. Orochimaru shook his head slowly. I have no idea. He did several things to help Naruto out, but why would he set us up like this? I just wish I knew. I would have done something about it. Tsunade said quietly, full of regret. There was little you could do that I couldn't, Tsunade, except heal him better. And with how he got hurt, he would have needed it. The snake Sannin mentioned. Tsunade was afraid to ask how bad the damage was, but luckily she didn't have to. He's been burned, stabbed, cut, hit with rocks, punched, kicked, almost drowned or thrown off buildings. All more than once, and all within the first 3 years of his life. Tsunade teared up and buried her head in her knees. I've ever heard of anything so monstrous in my life, and I'm a veteran shinobi. That's it. I'm officially and completely severing all ties to Konoha from here on out. I'm going to confront Sensei about this and most likely do the same thing. Jiraiya added forcefully. Inspiration struck Orochimaru just then. Actually, Jiraiya, I've got an idea for you. You see, I'm working on a certain project to help my kids and could probably use Tsunade to check over them regularly. You can't too, but maybe you could also play a part for our sensei. Let me guess, you want me to be a double agent? Jiraiya stated. Exactly. The snake Sannin answered. Whatever info you give sensei, you give us too. And this way, we can find out if Konoha's doing anything suspicious. For example, Jiraiya asked for clarification. Well, like whether or not anyone's trying to find Naruto, or maybe they have hostile intentions towards the new hidden village. Anything that could prove more dangerous for Naruto later on. I agree, it's a good plan. Tsunade claimed. Jiraiya sighed. Alright, it won't be easy, but I'll try. But if I don't like what sensei says when I ask why he lied, then the deal's off. Orochimaru nodded. Well, I think that's enough for now. I'm going to be heading towards the land of water soon. Wanna come along? End flashback. The trip had taken them a while, but they reached their destination. Jiraiya was infuriated the whole time, while Tsunade appeared downright depressed. Orochimaru had a good idea why for both. Jiraiya felt betrayed by Sarutobi and pissed at himself for never taking the time to confront Naruto's status from someone else. Even if he did trust the old man, he probably should have confirmed this info with another. So much more could have been done on Naruto's behalf if Jiraiya had known he was alive. And, as for Tsunade, she felt like a failure to Minato and Kushina since she hadn't even tried to do anything after Jiraiya came to her with grim news 3 years ago. She had gone to great lengths to care for Dan's niece Shizune, but hadn't gone to be with Kushina when the due date was near and thus could have helped him, as planned. Tsunade felt just plain horrible over that. Finding their way to Kiri wasn't too hard for them, mostly because they had been there before for their own Chunin exams years ago. Not to mention the fog was a dead giveaway they were heading in the right direction. When they got to the edges of the village, they hid in some trees rather than just enter. Shizune was currently hiding in a small den in the ground they could get back to later. Jiraiya summoned 2 small toads. You two check out the area. Let me know if you spot anything hinting to killing a lot of the residents. The toads departed and entered the misty village. You sure it'll be that obvious? Tsunade asked. You can't have whole clans be slaughtered and keep it a secret. Jiraiya commented. They waited for a while, but not as long as they initially expected when the toads came back. We saw a ton of people tied to posts, being kept in some sort of prison yard, as if they were going to be executed. Most of them looked unconscious, and none smelled dead, but we couldn't get close enough to confirm that with the guards around there. Jiraiya shared a look with his teammates. Not very discreet. I know this village has taken a turn towards being more vicious lately, but I figured they wouldn't make a spectacle out of something like this. Well, let's go see them ourselves and make them an offer. Orochimaru suggested. There are guards posted, just so you know, so it won't be that simple. The toad told them. We've got our ways. Orochimaru commented with a grin. When the Sannin snuck towards the wall surrounding the prison yard, Tsunade summoned 2 slugs and had them approach the nearest guards. Once the guards saw the gastropods, they spewed some non-lethal toxins at them, knocking them unconscious for about 2 hours. Tsunade and her slugs repeated this one more time on another pair of guards to make their entry less noticeable. Once they felt confident, the 3 shinobi sneaked inside. There they saw numerous people of various ages and genders tied up like they were going to be crucified. Some of them even had blindfolds on, implying they had jujutsus. There were even a few children, and at least one pregnant woman tied up here, showing that the current Mizukage was completely apathetic to them all. None of them looked dead, but few of them even looked conscious now. "Dear Kami." Tsunade gasped. Why are they doing such a thing? For some reason, the Mizukage began spreading anti-Kekkei Genkai propaganda here, claiming it's a crime of nature and a sign of demonic heritage. Considering I once heard that Kekkei Genkai originated from Jinchurikis, I could understand that, but they've gone so far as to make it a witch hunt here. Personally, I believe that the Mizukage is intimidated by them all. Jiraiya quietly thought out loud. Well, I don't care about that. Let's see if they're willing to hear us out. Orochimaru stated. He then carefully and quietly approached one of the conscious prisoners, followed by his teammates. Who are you? What do you want? The prisoner quietly asked, more out of fear than anything else. This one was a man with a white shirt, a navy blue hakama, and no footwear on. His hair was blue tinted black and cut really short. I'm here to make all you an offer. Take it, and you'll live like you always have been, refuse, and you'll stay here. Orochimaru answered. What are you, a devil? Like I really have an option when it comes to that. Just what's in it for you? I'm creating a new hidden village and hoping to find some people to live in it with skills to offer. I'm sure at least some people here would rather live there than die here. The snake Sannin told him. Wait, did you just say you could save us? A woman with long brown hair who looked like she was playing dead suddenly spoke up. The Sannin nodded. Please, take me and my daughter out of here. I don't want to die. A few other voices rose and announced their desires to flee, all keeping quiet to avoid unwanted attraction from the guards. Okay, we'll cut you all down from these posts. Those that want to escape with us get behind us, and those that would rather stay here can. Fair enough, Jiraiya asked. There were no objections. With the help of some shadow clones, the Sannin were able to unite everyone in the prison yard. Apparently none of the captives decided it was better to remain in Kiri and risk delaying execution, so all 214 prisoners unanimously decided to become citizens of the newest shinobi village in the land of rice paddies. Far away enough to ensure their safety from Kiri's influence and enough people to make the new village have a good start. Before the Sannin and the prisoners could escape the prison yard, some of the guards spotted them. 3 guards with Kiri Kitai stood at the gate brandishing swords. What the hell is going on here? One of them shouted. The first prisoner the Sannin spoke to rushed over to these guards and activated his Kekkei Genkai. Apparently he had one that made his skin become like armor, and he had some pent-up rage to release now. Covered entirely in his armor, he punched each one of them and broke their swords as they tried to strike him. His punches were like being hit with a hammer, making all 3 guards collapse. When done, he turned to face everyone else. We gotta hurry. No time to be sneaky about it. So let's just scream. With that, everyone ran out of there like a frightened herd of wildebeests. Tsunade made sure to grab Shizune before they left her behind. More guards were alerted and tried to stop them, but those with active battle-ready Kekkei Genkai fought back mercilessly. Orochimaru had many snakes the size of giant anacondas defend them too. Tsunade had some slugs spray various venoms at their antagonizers, and Jiraiya had some small toads spit out oil to make pursuit difficult and to burn anyone unlucky enough to get covered in it. Oddly, at least one of the guards actually helped them out by showing them the best way out of the village. He was tall with a bandaged face and gray camouflage pants on, and he wielded a large black sword single-handedly. He was apparently one of the assigned shinobi who disagreed with the Mizukage's orders and didn't want to stay under his authority anymore. He was also probably one of the few who would join them that didn't actually have a Kekkei Genkai, but not the only one. A few normal people joined the escape too, fearing the Mizukage would target them later on for some reason. By the stroke of midnight, the 3 Sannin and over 200 people formerly of Kurigakure had reached the shore and got onto several ships already arranged for them to leave. Before they could be pursued any further, Orochimaru had some sea snakes take care of anyone who might try to follow them to the mainland. As a result, they reached the land of rice paddies undisturbed within 4 weeks. Once Jiraiya and Tsunade reached the palace of the emperor of the land of rice paddies, they both had only one thought crossing their minds. Where is Naruto? Orochimaru could tell this and felt he should just let them, but since Naruto was bound to be watched over by one of the 2 snakes, they couldn't just go up to him. So he had to let Sango, and maybe Kyoku too, know about this before he told the daimyo anything. After checking a few major rooms, they stumbled upon a shallow pool in one of the yards of the palace and saw two children playing in the shallow end. One was a girl with short black hair that had a bluish tint to it, and the other was a boy that looked exactly like a young Minato with 6 whiskers. No question who that boy could possibly be. Naruto. Tsunade shouted happily before she darted out to hug the boy she thought had been dead for 3 years. However, her path became blocked by an orange and black snake the size of a large boa. And it did not look pleased. Sango, stand down. These two can see him. Orochimaru told the snake. All right, sir, but I shall keep watch over him still. Sango stated. Orochimaru nodded, showing his 2 teammates they could proceed. Just remember guys, he's young and not used to strangers approaching him with good intentions. So you might want to restrain yourselves a bit for now. Tsunade and Jiraiya tried to keep that in mind while they tepidly approached the pool. The kids obviously saw them and stopped playing to watch the new adults who could now see the girl was a Hyuga. Hi. Are you two Jaisen's friends? Naruto asked with a polite smile. Tsunade couldn't restrain herself any longer and reached out to hug him. She got into the pool and went right up to the young boy and enveloped him in a soft embrace, surprising both kids. Fortunately, neither screamed or anything like that. Tsunade muttered something unintelligible, like she was trying to say several things at once to him. She loosened her hold on him when she felt him squirm, but she didn't let him go just yet. When she looked at his face, she saw he was worried, but not downright panicked. It's okay, Naruto. I'm Tsunade, I'm like your grandmother. Naruto gasped. Oh, really? He turned to Orochimaru for confirmation, which he gave, then back to Tsunade. Ba-chan? Tsunade happily cried at hearing him call her that, and she hugged him tighter and whispered something in his ear. Jiraiya leaned in, perched on the edge of the pool, and smiled warmly. Hey there, kid. I'm Jiraiya, and I guess that means I'm like your grandfather then. Irojai-chan? Naruto innocently asked, much to Tsunade's amusement and Jiraiya's chagrin. Even Orochimaru chuckled at that, guessing Tsunade must have told the boy to call him that. And just where have you two been all this time? An irritable girl's voice said from the direction of the other side of the room. Everyone looked to see Anko standing by the doorway inside, looking upset with her arms crossed in front of her. It looked like she had just recently shown up to hear this. Anko-chan, something wrong? Orochimaru asked carefully, having a good idea what was on her mind. Yes, there is Jaisen. These two have been gone all this time, playing around like you said, and now they think they can just go up to him and act like it's no big deal? What gives? Fortunately, the two visiting Sannin could tell this girl was just being protective of Naruto rather than downright telling them off, so they didn't overreact to her claim. Jiraiya stood up and looked at her gently. We would have helped him out, but the Hokage lied to us and told us he died years ago. Anko's eyebrows arched, but her expression didn't overall change. The old man who helped him out? Why would he do that? That's what I intend to find out. Jiraiya replied. But just so you know, if he didn't, me and Tsunade here would have come back to Konoha to care for him. Are you two married? The young purple-haired girl asked curiously. Both Sannin looked unsure how best to answer her, while the remaining one covered his grin with his hand. Actually, we're just friends and prefer things that way. Tsunade managed to make herself speak a bit later. And we're gonna be here for Naruto from now on. I have to take off one more thing first. Jiraiya added. I'll see you guys soon. I don't want to wait anymore to hear what excuse he has for this. He then shooshined out of the palace. Wouldn't want to be sensei now. Orochimaru commented. 2 days later, Sarutobi was going through the paperwork at his desk when Jiraiya invited himself into the office. Jiraiya? This certainly is a surprise. Not as much as the one I got. The Toad Sannin commented. What do you mean? The old Hokage asked. Oh, I happened to bump into my old teammate not too long ago. I was surprised to see him away from the village and thought it was a good idea to look into it. Imagine my reaction when he told me why he left. Sarutobi was perceptive enough to hear what wasn't actually being said here. I'm sure you've got some questions you want answered. No, I want to play golf. Of course I want answers, Jiraiya responded by almost yelling, being sarcastic in the beginning then completely serious at the end. Let's start with the most obvious one. Why the fuck did you lie to me like that? Sarutobi paused to inhale from his pipe, making Jiraiya suspect he was buying time to phrase his explanation in an innocent way. More likely to cover his own ass. What would you have done if I hadn't? Sarutobi asked him plainly. My duty. And neglect your spy network which has kept Konoha well guarded these past few years? Wouldn't that have endangered Naruto and everyone else here in Konoha? Sarutobi asked. If I had been told the truth, I could have informed Tsunade who would have come back here and watch over him when I couldn't, so I wouldn't have had to drop my work. And Orochimaru would still have been able to help. So all three Sannin could have watched over him rather than just one. What do you have to say to that? Jiraiya countered. Tsunade would have had to focus her time at the hospital, and you know she might have drank a lot in his company, and that wouldn't have been a good idea. Sarutobi stated. Personally, I'm amazed Orochimaru found as much time as he did for the boy, but you and Tsunade would have been more pressed with your jobs. Maybe you're right for me, but Tsunade would have more likely volunteered than taken a real job. And if anything, Naruto would have been a positive influence on her, rather than her being a bad one to him. And if a child was raised and taught by multiple Sannin, he would have become a big target by this village's enemies. Naruto was already endangered by being Minato's son, and I needed to keep him out of the spotlight as much as possible. Jiraiya snorted angrily. If that was true, then why did you allow knowledge of him being a Jinchuriki to be known to others? Sarutobi looked curious. Just what did Orochimaru tell you? For that matter, why didn't you bring him here with you? This is between you and me, sensei. And he told me everything, from the ceiling to the council and civilians trying to murder Naruto since literally day one. And here you've been telling me he's been dead all this time. Again, what gives? I told you. I needed to keep him out of our enemy's interest. Jiraiya narrowed his eyes. And yet you let him be in the line of danger here. Sounds like you felt someone was going to be hurt no matter what, and better it be Naruto alone than others with him. That's low, sensei. He sighed and turned around. I need to be scarce for a bit of sense. Also, I don't think Tsunade is going to ever come back here without wanting to destroy something. Sarutobi didn't look like he was going to argue against this. Hope you can understand things better once you think about some things. And I hope you'll still come back at the designated time for your report. Jiraiya said nothing, just left the room. But before he left Konoha, he had one more stop to make, although he would have to be careful with this part. After all, he couldn't exactly give away the source of his info. Jiraiya stopped in front of the Hyuga household and was greeted by the guards. What business do you have here? I'm Jiraiya of the Sannin, and I'd like to speak with the head of the Hyuga clan regarding some info I've acquired. The guards remained silent, but one agreed to his request and let him enter. Wait here. I'll go get them. Jiraiya waited, and a few minutes later an unbranded Hyuga woman entered carrying a young infant. A girl judging from the pink blanket wrapped around it. Hello. I'm Hitomi Hyuga. Sorry my husband couldn't greet you, but he's busy at the moment. Judging from her shadowy eyes and rough voice, this woman was not well. So busy that someone who looks like they should be in a hospital needs to speak for them, Jiraiya thought. Now Hyuga-san, as you may know, I'm one of the Sannin, and I've got ears listening in many places. One of my sources says that some time ago, about a month ago, a Hyuga from the main branch was kidnapped by a Kumo nin and declared dead. Is this true? Hitomi started crying and sat down. The baby in her arms started fussing, so she cooed to it to calm her down. Why yes, that's correct. That was my daughter Hinata. Orochimaru told me he saved her, but the girl said this family was full of child beaters. She said her mother was nice, but dead. She must have been wrong about that part, but is she on the other side? This was the main reason Jiraiya wanted to see the Hyugas while he was in Konoha. Ma'am, that same source told me some rather unpleasant news. They said they saw the body, and before they destroyed it per ninja orders, they saw signs of abuse before the kidnap. Implying that someone here hurt her physically, maybe more than once. Hitomi wanted to throw up when hearing this. That can't be. Tell me, who all mourned for the girl when she was announced dead? Jiraiya asked. We all held a small ceremony for my daughter. Hitomi almost yelled, outraged he would ask something like that. How many actually shedded tears? Jiraiya asked. I don't remember. Hitomi answered, recalling that many had dry eyes. Maybe even Hiashi did too, but she refused to believe that. I'm sorry if this bothers you, but I've got a reliable story that says this clan has child beaters in it. Jiraiya told her. Hitomi glared, then coughed before she could retort. And just what source is this? Jiraiya stood up and led her into a nearby washroom. He was sure no one would bother using the Byakugan to peek into an occupied room with a toilet in it, but he did activate a silencing jutsu. My source is the one watching over the victim herself. Hitomi gasped. Are you saying? He nodded. Yes, your daughter is still alive. She was saved by my teammate who has been watching her since. He won't bring her back, since she says everyone here, but her mother was mean to her. So I can't bring her here. She looked ready to cry a waterfall's worth of tears. But if you're up to it, I can take you to her. Problem is I can't promise you can just come back here. Or if you even should, considering you don't seem so fit now. I haven't been so good since my second birth. I had to be kept away for a few weeks, and at one point the doctors thought I already died. Hitomi explained. I can see why a 3-year-old girl would conclude her mother was already dead then. The Toad-sanin thought to himself. But I've only recovered so much. The doctors don't think I have much longer anyway. The Hyuga matriarch confessed. Please sir, let me see my daughter one more time. Take me to her. Never mind my health. Alright, tell whoever you must, you're going out of town to see a talented medic to treat you, and pack up any way you want with you. Oh, and bring the infant too. You'll understand if I prefer not leaving her with potential child abusers. Jiraiya told her, to which she agreed. A few minutes later Hiashi and the other Hyuga were informed of her going on medical leave with Jiraiya's assistance. They were against the new heiress going along, but Hitomi argued that she would still be nursing the baby, so this was for the best. Without further argument and the approval of the Hokage, Jiraiya was on his way back to the land of rice paddies with 2 Hyugas, riding Gamabunta to get there quicker. When Jiraiya showed up that night he was greeted by Tsunade and Orochimaru. Gamabunta dispelled after his riders were on the ground. Suheim, this woman needs medical care now. She's the Hyuga girl's mother. But Hinata-chan said she was dead. Orochimaru said. Not quite, but I sure feel like it some days. Hitomi answered wearily. Tsunade did a quick diagnostic jutsu. Looks like someone gave you a slow-acting poison to kill you. When did this start? She didn't wait for an answer before she got started on the anti-venom jutsu best for this. I think after I gave birth to my second daughter Hanabi. Hitomi answered, feeling a sense of calm from the jutsu. Somebody must have wanted you dead, but not immediately. Why, I haven't the foggiest. But this should clear things up. Just try not to stay active so soon. Tsunade told her. Is my daughter Hinata here? Can I see her please? Hitomi pleaded. I'll take you to her. Orochimaru told her, leading her inside the palace. A teary reunion between mother and daughter, both thought deceased by the other, followed by a teary explanation of the physical harm forced onto said daughter by other relatives. Said mother decided not to return to Konoha and would later be considered dead by natural causes in the Hyuga records, with Hanabi suffering SIDS at the same time. In time the new hidden village was completed and ready to be inhabited. Orochimaru, who had been declared the ruler of the village, stood on an alcove on a central tower to address the new citizens of the village, both shinobi and civilians mixed together. Welcome everyone to this new shinobi village. I know we may not seem like much now, but we will soon become a respected force in the ninja world. Why? Because we'll have the elements of surprise and mystery better than any other. And because I'm sure this population will band together to help the rest, rather than look for reasons to ostracize each other. Almost every head in the crowd nodded. So let us strive to be a grand village, rather than a barbaric one, which I'm sure some of you will agree some of the major hidden villages have started becoming. Again some people nodded. Today a new village has been born. From here on out, this village's name will be Atagakar, the Hidden Sound Village. The name was based on a set of cannons positioned at each of the gates around the village that fired off huge chakra-powered sound attacks at intruders. A 5th one was on top of the cage tower and could be fired in any direction if need be. Everyone cheered and hailed Orochimaru as the Shade Motokichi. After the first day being in the new village called Oto, the 3 Sannin gathered together with the kids in their care along with Hinata's mother. Orochimaru started the topic of discussion. Okay, we now have a place to call home and live safely. So now the issue is who lives with who and where. My daughters are staying with me. Hitomi claimed assertively, putting her arms around Hinata and Hanabi to emphasize her point. Thanks to Tsunade's help she was as healthy as a horse, when by now she would have died for real. I don't think anyone was going to contest that. However, I do recommend that, if you're going to live here rather than Konoha, that you change your name so we can avoid any problems. Jiraiya told her. Hitomi nodded. Sounds fair. I think we'll go with the name Hibiki, in honor of this new village. Hibiki means sound, echo. Orochimaru smiled. I think that's quite an appropriate choice. But won't people see your connection to the Hyugas just by looking at your eyes? I can wear contact lenses to cover that up, and so can my daughters when they're old enough. And maybe we can modify the Juiken enough so that others won't connect us that way either. Sounds good. Now, as for the other kids, I think we should, Tsunade suggested. Me and Atauto will stay with Jayasen then. Anko stated, cutting off the slug Sanin before she could say otherwise. Now little girl Jiraiya started. Anko gave him an angry look. No, old man. I know you and her are Naruto-chan's grandparents, but you two were more interested in books and beer to notice him. Now you come here and want to act like it never happened? No way. My brother is staying with those I know will care for him. Orochimaru smiled at how fierce this child could be in the face of two Sanin. Anko-chan, you're going to be quite a force when you're older. He then cleared his throat to catch her attention. Actually, Anko-chan, what my teammates were going to say is we all reside here in this tower. That way all you kids can be together and we all can watch over you. No fair splitting you guys up, is it? Or giving you random people to call parents now? Anko's temper deflated. Yes, Jayasen. This will also help us keep an eye on those marks you all have now. Orochimaru added. Tsunade, Jiraiya, and Hitomi had been more than appalled to hear about that little incident. Jiraiya tried to seal it up, but couldn't undo it for reasons that escaped him. It was as if it was only part seal, part something else entirely. Tsunade checked, as well, and her medic ninjutsu did nothing to improve it. If anything, her jutsus meant to calm it only aggravated it instead. What about Hinata? Hitomi asked, since her oldest child had the curse mark too. There's enough room for the three of you, as well. The carpenters sensed several people might reside in this tower, so there's enough room here for 24. Orochimaru answered. Do you really want to stay here? Just like that? Kabuto curiously asked. Hitomi nodded. You heard what Hinata went through. How could I make her go back to that? Or Hanabi either, to maybe be their new target? Better I stay here and let them think I'm dead or something, even my husband. He wouldn't be able to hide this secret from the Hyuga Council. Yay! Hinata-chan is staying with us. Naruto cutely cheered, making the adults and the mentioned girl grin. Later that night, while everyone was asleep, Jiraiya was doing a quick check on Naruto's seal. Just a precaution to make sure no one had done any tampering with it without Orochimaru's knowledge. It was unlikely, but the Snake Sanin wasn't as good with seals as the Toad Sanin, and he couldn't have watched Naruto 24/7 for 3 years. So Orochimaru let him check it out, but he, Tsunade, and Anko insisted on sticking around and watching, if nothing but to satisfy their own curiosity and protective sides. Jiraiya checked Naruto's sedated body over like a surgeon might. He noticed the curse mark darkened and tried to spread it in the meantime, so he put a suppressor seal on it for the meantime. Hopefully it will last. But when he took a direct look at the seal for the Kyuubi, Jiraiya's vision darkened for a moment. When he could see again, he saw himself in front of a giant set of cage doors standing in shallow water. He noticed a piece of paper with the kanji for seal on it on the cage and knew exactly where he was. Minato, did you plan this? Or am I here by accident? The pervy sage asked himself. The sound of breathing and groaning made him stop, and the sight of a large red eye slowly opening made him freeze. Who are you? A tired but strong voice asked him. Jiraiya was half tempted to give his trademark introduction, but wisely thought the better of it. I'm just checking up on the boy. I never expected to come across you. The Kyuubi shut its eye again and slowly reopened it, but not as much this time. If you're here to hurt the kit, you just made a big mistake. The fox growled, almost protectively. I'm here to help him. The last thing I want to do is hurt him. Kyuubi looked at him like it was studying him, and it appeared more alert and awake this time. How do you intend to help him? Since I'm with him, I'd be affected, so I have the right to know. I just wanted to make sure the seal hasn't been tampered with or weakened in any way. Some idiots in Konoha could have easily done that if they did anything to him without truly thinking it through. Jiraiya explained. The Kyuubi groaned, or maybe yawned, it was hard to tell here. Nothing like that I've seen. From what I recall, the seal was the only part of him those bastards and bitches left alone. Jiraiya blinked in surprise. From what you recall? I saw everything through his eyes. I can't do anything except heal him though, but only so much, or he might get poisoned from my chakra. Otherwise I'd have gotten rid of that new mark myself. That one's a bit of a nuisance. From what I can tell, it's some sort of false Kekkei Genkai, giving him a unique ability, but it can't be passed down to his own kits. By the way, go easy on the sedatives, they're only making it worse for him. How? Jiraiya asked. I'm no expert like that vixen you're with, but the man who gave the kit, that Mark said being close to death would trigger a second stage for that Mark. I think being heavily sedated for a time might be just as effective for it. Jiraiya thought this over. I'll take your word for it, since that thing is very confusing to me. I've been trying to understand it since the kit and the others got it. I believe it's some sort of secondary chakra source that first awakens in a dangerous situation. Maybe activating an already present Kekkei Genkai will trigger it too, but I'm not sure. Does kind of throw a wrench into my possible offer. The Kyuubi mentioned. Possible offer? Jiraiya repeated curiously. I might as well tell you anyway, since the kit's too young to understand. You see, the Biju, when sealed inside a human, can do something to help their host out and prolong their life. Usually, the creation of a Kekkei Genkai, thus the source of them all. Kyuubi explained. So that little tidbit I heard was right. Jiraiya quickly thought. The Kyuubi continued explaining. The way it works is based on the host's age and the number of our tails. Take the Ichibi for example, he can offer a single Kekkei Genkai to his host, but it has to be done before the first birthday, or else all he gets is extra chakra and quick healing. Since a human, that young can't understand the situation, the Ichibi usually chooses the Kekkei Genkai for them, and it's always sand-wielding. So you can give Naruto a Kekkei Genkai to make him a better ninja when he's older? Jiraiya asked, and Kyuubi nodded. But Naruto's 3, going on 4. Isn't he too old for you to do that? If I was the Ichibi, or anything weaker than the Sanbi, then yes. But I have until he's 9 years old, since I have 9 tails. And what's more, I can give him 9 Kekkei Genkais total, either already existing or completely original. All he has to do is decide which ones he wants, and I can give them to him. Jiraiya gasped. 9 Kekkei Genkai? How could anyone possibly handle that? He can't use them all at once. And if he were to reproduce, when he's using one of them, it would be passed down to his own kits. He'll basically be a Kekkei Genkai factory and need 9 mates when he's old enough. Jiraiya paled. 9 women? I never thought I'd envy a 3-year-old before. Then he thought of something unperverted. Wait, what do you get out of this? 2 things. 1, that he won't die anytime soon. The host's death hurts the Biju too, and it hurts like hell every time. And 2, when he finally does die, if he accepts the offer, then I don't die with him, but get to return home. Otherwise, our lives become permanently linked. Haven't you ever wondered why everyone says when a Jinchuriki dies the Biju does too, but all 9 of us are still alive when there have been Jinchuriki in the past? Jiraiya went over all this newly gathered info quietly. When he opened his eyes, he found himself back outside the seal in the room with the others, laying on his back with everyone, but Naruto gathered above him. How long was I out? A few minutes. Did something happen? Tsunade answered. Jiraiya sat up and popped his back. Yeah, I ended up talking to the fox somehow and heard something rather interesting. Like what? Anko asked. Well, Jiraiya started. Crap, how can I explain this to a kid? After thinking of the best way to phrase it, he answered her. Let's just say Naruto here, when older, is going to be very strong and needs several girlfriends. Anko smiled, but Tsunade scowled. You better not be planning on making him a pervert. Anko-chan, why don't you leave the room for a bit so the grown-ups can talk about this? Orochimaru suggested. The purple-haired girl got the hint and left the room, but hung outside the door to eavesdrop. I know you're still there, Anko-chan. Thus she sighed in defeat and walked away. Now what's this about several girlfriends? Tsunade asked, hostile, with the beginning signs of fire in her eyes. I know this is hard for you to believe, but the Kyuubi told me that when Naruto here turns 9 he can create 9 Kekkei Genkai for him to have, and he can pass one down to each of his children. So 9 wives would help him out, unless you'd rather one girl have 9 children. Jiraiya explained. Tsunade blanched, while Orochimaru grinned. He can create his own Kekkei Genkai? Jiraiya nodded. Or he can assume one that already exists or went extinct. He can only use one at a time though, and each kid of his can only inherit one. I'm not sure what the case would be if the mother has one too though. Orochimaru's grin widened. This is perfect. I know we already brought in some Kekkei Genkais, but an opportunity like this is like a godsend. Think about it, we can either help out a thinning bloodline or make one that none of our enemies have ever heard of. Hell, we are even able to improve already existing ones. Calm down team, none of this can happen until he's 9. Jiraiya pointed out. I know. So we've got 6 years to help Naruto come up with 9 abilities. Oh, the possibilities. I think we just got a great trump card against Konoha. Orochimaru claimed. Morning came, and the 3 Sannin were the first to wake up. This was rather early for Tsunade, but she didn't have a hangover this time. Orochimaru, who was used to getting up early to check on the kids right away, did just that while his teammates still had to rub the sleep out of their eyes. Oddly, before he got to any of their rooms to see if they were up yet, he ran into Hitomi, who looked like she was waiting for him. "Good morning, Sannin-sama. Would it be alright if I had a word with you before the children get up?" "Sure, and call me Orochimaru please." The pale Sannin told her, as he led her to an empty room, that he was planning on making a kitchen for the residents. "So what's on your mind, Hitomi-san?" The pale-eyed woman seemed hesitant to answer, but made no effort not to. "Orochimaru-sama, remember how Tsunade-sama said my problems were because of someone poisoning me and not related to childbirth complications?" He nodded. "I've been thinking it over, and even though it disgusts me, I think I know why someone would do that." Orochimaru could easily sense how troubling this was for her. "Would you like some tea or something? You look like you need something for your nerves." "That would be nice, thank you," she answered quietly. Fortunately, the room had enough already in it to boil water, so Orochimaru was able to actually make the drink. He didn't say a word more until it was done, and he handed her a steaming cup, keeping one for himself in case she didn't feel right drinking alone. After taking a long sip, Hitomi started telling what she knew and suspected. "It all started before Hanabi was born, to be honest. But I should probably start there. You see, when I had problems after she was born, I thought it was normal after birth complications, just more exhausting than what I went through with Hinata. But ever since Tsunade-sama told me someone had poisoned me, I've been thinking it over, and I can only come to one conclusion. I've been wondering about that too, but go on." Hitomi sighed. "The way I see it, only someone from the Hyuga main branch would have had the opportunity. Even my own husband could be a suspect, although I don't want to believe that. As for motive, that requires me to tell you something rather unpleasant I discovered a week before Hanabi was born. Something that may have larger ramifications than I already suspect." She could tell the snake Sannin was still paying attention here, so she decided not to beat around the bush anymore. "One day that week, I was supposed to get a checkup to ensure my baby was doing well, and I had to wait for the doctor to show up. I got curious and used my Byakugan to see how far away they were so I'd know how long to wait, but my eyes saw something much more interesting. I saw numerous connected paper bombs inside the walls of the building and even the foundation. And the connections led to outside, so I checked the full scope of my visual limits and saw there was a whole network of paper bombs throughout the entire village." Orochimaru somehow paled. "Paper bombs throughout the village?" Hitomi nodded. "Yeah, I was immediately worried. Someone could destroy the entire place with just a kunai or something if they wanted to. I was going to alert someone, but before I did I thought of something. The vast majority of those bombs were built inside buildings, meaning they were put there when the village was being built or reconstructed, and that was a long time ago. There is no possible way I was the first Hyuga to actually catch a glimpse of this setup. Even if I didn't make it a point to use my Byakugan regularly off the compound, others would, and someone would have had to spot something." Orochimaru frowned and nodded. "Meaning a genjutsu was involved that stopped working, or they're the ones who made this trap?" Hitomi nodded with him. "Or at least they know about it and plan to use it to their advantage somehow." "How do you envision them doing something like that?" "Well, I have heard talk from the Hyuga elders about how they feel the Hyuga should run the village," Hitomi started. Orochimaru scoffed. Sounds like a typical Uchiha attitude." "Oh, pardon. It's okay. Anyway, I always thought it was just banter. But now, I suspect they may someday try it, and if they fail, they'd trigger the network to take the whole village down with them. I brought this up with Hokage-sama, and he admitted this was a serious issue and would get right on it. I kept silent about it and saw Anbu poking around the city, so I'm sure it's being handled. I think someone in the main branch must have caught on to what I discovered because I went into labor earlier than expected, and that would have been the perfect chance to get rid of me." Orochimaru nodded. "Makes sense. If you had died they could have said it was from childbirth and not murder. And I'm willing they did something that triggered labor so they could get a second heiress before losing you. One thing I don't get is how they could have known you knew anything if you only spoke to." His eyes widened at this new thought and he dropped his teacup. As it shattered on the floor, he stood up in outrage. "That son of a bitch. What's wrong with Orochimaru-sama?" Hitomi quickly asked, afraid she had upset him somehow. "Hitomi-san, the way I see it, there's only one way for anyone from the Hyuga to know you found out anything. And that's for the one person you told to have told them," Orochimaru explained with a grim expression. Hitomi gasped. "You mean Hokage-sama?" Orochimaru nodded. "How else? And even worse, that means he's onto the bomb trap as well. If he wasn't, he wouldn't say a word to the Hyuga and simply have Anbu remove them without anyone knowing. If he told anyone, it could only be because he was part of the setup. Maybe the whole thing was his idea and he's using some of the Hyuga clan to keep an eye on the network. And I'm willing to bet those Anbu you saw were just making sure the whole thing was still operable." Hitomi placed her tea down. "Do you really think the Hokage would do such a thing?" The Sannin slowly and sadly nodded. "There are things about the man I don't want to believe either, but I've seen too much to deny it. And now I'm suspecting there are more secrets of his we could benefit from knowing. If only you could find evidence of them," Hitomi casually offered. Orochimaru smiled in his trademark manner, already coming up with an idea. Later that same day, 3 toads were inside Saratobi's office while the old Hokage was at a council meeting. One of them went in first and managed to hotwire the one security camera into playing a continuous loop of nothing happening. Since the Hokage Tower was one of the most secure places in Konoha with ninja, traps, and seals everywhere, cameras were little more than a peace of mind last resort that few paid much attention to. Once the toad was sure he succeeded in tricking the camera and anyone who may check the footage later, all 3 went to the Hokage safe. The safe was designed to contain anything that was for the Hokage's eyes only and anything they left for their successor. "It's a good thing the old man told Jiraiya of the combination," a red toad mentioned as he turned the dial. "Yeah, the old man must have never suspected Jiraiya of wanting to take a close personal look at anything without breasts," a yellow toad was added. He was partially right, because Saratobi told Jiraiya the combination to the safe to ensure he could secure whatever was inside and add to it should he himself be someday unable to. The safe opened, and there was no alert, since only the Hokage was likely to open it anyway. The 3 toads grabbed as much as they could, locked the door, and disappeared in a puff of smoke. Back in Oto, the 3 Sannin patiently waited while Hitomi was watching over the children elsewhere in the tower. When the 3 toads returned to them, they were both eager and apprehensive about what they may find. Either way, they wanted to get through it all quickly so they could put everything back and never be caught. Unlikely, yes, but not impossible for the Sannin. Besides, all they were really looking for was anything that might pose a threat to Naruto later. The first thing to catch their eyes was a set of documents in a folder with Iwa written on it. Considering the relations Konoha had with the Rock Village, they couldn't help but wonder what was inside. What they found was the last thing they'd ever expect to see. The official story about Iwa was that during the last war Minato used his Hiraishin and Rasengan, among other impressive jutsus, to decimate a large number of rock nin to save Konoha and thus earned Iwa's animosity for generations to come. If we ever knew he had a living relative, especially a defenseless one like Naruto, they'd do absolutely anything to kill them come hell or high water. Saratobi had made sure each one of the Sannin knew this, even before the boy was born. Apparently that had been another lie to the Sannin. According to the documents in the file, Iwa was actually grateful to the Yondaime rather than spiteful. The shinobi he killed were about to try their own complete and total takeover of Iwa, and Minato happened to be in the right place at the right time to get rid of them all. The end result was the Namika's name being praised in Iwa and them wanting to be allies with the Yondaime and his family. If anything, they'd give Naruto their own forbidden scroll before trying to kill him. "Sensei lied to us about Iwa?" Tsunade managed to make herself ask. "Why the hell would he do that?" "I don't know, but I plan on going to visit the Tsuchikage and confirming this detail right away," Jiraiya told them. "If it's true, then we'll have a good ally for this village." Orochimaru nodded. "Agreed. What was that old fool thinking by misleading us that way? What was he afraid of? Look at this one," Tsunade said as she held up another folder labeled Suna. "This one has messages from the current Hokage to the current Kazekage in regards to their own Jinchuriki." "Suna has a Jinchuriki?" Orochimaru asked. Jiraiya nodded. "Yep, the Ichibi from what I've gathered. And he's about Naruto's age, if I remember correctly." "Well, get this." Tsunade started as she held out one of the papers she'd been looking over. Sarutobi-sensei said to the Kazekage, and I quote, "So you've got the Ichibi contained? Big deal. I've got the Kyuubi under my control, and when he's older he'll do whatever I tell him, because he'll see me as one of the few worth listening to here. You'd have to put your son through several kinds of physical and emotional hell before you pose any kind of threat to my village's grandeur." End quote. Orochimaru wanted to puke. So it's not enough that he tried to sabotage Naruto's chances for a good future, but he had to try and do the same for a kid in another village? Tsunade pulled out another page rather than answer. And it says here from the Kazekage that he's calling the old man's bluff and trying to make his Jinchuriki, his own son nonetheless, into a perfect killing machine. If you don't mind, I'd like to go there and see what I can do about it. What do you hope to accomplish? Orochimaru asked. Well, I'd like to see just what the Kazekage is doing to his son and if possible persuade him to stop. There's no reason for him to be so malicious just because Sarutobi-sensei egged him on. The medic nin explained, then swallowed hard. Also, if possible, I'd like to bring Naruto along, since I'm sure he can relate to the poor boy better than anyone else could. Take Naruto with you? Orochimaru asked in disbelief. The sad thing was that he understood her reasoning. If the son Jinchuriki was suffering, then Naruto would be the perfect person to lift his spirits and maybe undo any damage. But at the same time, the idea of Naruto going somewhere without him wasn't a good one to him considering the past 3 years. I think that might be a good idea for Orochimaru. Jiraiya added. The only reason they were really seeking his approval wasn't because he was the chosen ruler of the city, but because they were aware he had more say over Naruto's well-being than they did, irregardless of their godparent status they never used. Alright, but his guardian Sango is going with him. I'm sure Anko-chan will want to, as well though, so how do you feel about that? The Snake Sannin asked. Personally I'd rather not. I'm good enough to protect him on my own, and she'd just get in the way. The Slug Sannin answered. Orochimaru chuckled. Try telling her that, I dare you. With the help of some clones the documents were quickly copied, and the Toads were very fortunate to get the forgeries inside the vault before Sarutobi returned to his office. The authentic ones would stay in Odo should they be needed later, and no one in Konoha would be the wiser unless Sarutobi took a good look at his own secret collection. The next day Jiraiya told everyone in the tower he needed to check out something in a village up north. Tsunade said she had to do the same in a village down south. Everyone wished them luck, but once she mentioned she'd be bringing Naruto with her, Anko and Hinata acted up. Hinata just cried because she regarded the boy as her best friend, and Anko didn't really trust Naruto to be with any adults besides Orochimaru too much. In the end, when Tsunade did leave Odo, she brought along 2 kids and a snake, hoping she wouldn't come back with less. For anyone that's curious, all 9 Kekkei Genkai have already been selected. Only 8 girls have been confirmed now, so there's still 1 position available. At this time, Temari is the most likely candidate. Thanks for watching my video, leave a like if you enjoyed my video, and also do consider subscribing to my channel for more awesome content. If you want the next part of this story, let me know in the comment box. See you next time, till then sayonara.